Amanda. I loved that Nahi was before me. Your presentation was amazing. We're gonna add a little bit of stuff. We're gonna give shed light on some things we questioned in the presentation اللي فات, such as who's more likely to have fear of loneliness and how they're gonna manifest that into a relationship, and which style is more likely to do that. Great thing that you shared it for me. Okay. Today we're going to discuss attachment and attachment styles, particularly in couples relationships. But before we start today, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. You don't have to have a romantic relationship or have been in a romantic relationship to find what we're going to talk about today resonate with you. We're going to talk about certain patterns of behavior, and that pattern is going to feel very close to home. And you'll find it manifesting itself in your daily relationships, in your friendships, in your family ties, with your co-workers. It's basically to say when there is a connection, there is attachment. And when there is attachment, your attachment style tends to manifest itself. So a little bit an overview of what we're going to discuss today. We're going to discuss about, we're going to start with the messages that we're receiving in the modern world of dating right now. And what's the attachment is feeling about it. And we're going to go into the attachment principles, the things that are universal to us all in the room, regardless of our style. And then we're going to go into the unique perspective of each style, how they think, all their thought processes. It's going to feel very familiar to you, how you behave, how you think as each attachment style. We're going to emphasize very much the anxious and avoidant. And hopefully we're going to move into giving some kind of new perspective on how the anxious and avoidant could view relationships differently and develop a more secure ways. And of course, we're going to talk about couples relationship. Of course, I'm going to use real life examples. Yeah, but might be very familiar to you. Okay, so on a show of hands, okay, I want you to help me here. So I'm going to say messages that we hear all the time in the modern world. And I want you to raise your hand if you heard it before. Okay, so the first message is your happiness and well-being are your sole responsibility. I've heard that sentence. Yeah? Okay. Wait for the next one. Don't make yourself too available. Say you're busy when you're not. Do not call him first. Wait for him to call you. Do not show that you Do not show that you care. Act mysterious. How many of you heard that as a message? Okay. And bear in mind, you're going to be very attractive. So you're going to be very attractive to a certain attachment style. And we're going to discuss that attachment style in a few slides. Again, you should not allow your inner peace to be disturbed by the person closest to you. Yeah. And lastly, the main issues of dating in the modern world is codependencies, and you're not setting enough boundaries. How many of you heard boundaries in the last 2 weeks? So we're going to delve into the attachment principles and see what the attachment feels about these advice. So one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, are humans wired to be that way? In many studies, and actually a study conducted by Cohen and his colleagues, and they brought in female participants and they divided them into 3 groups, okay? And all of them, they told them, we're going to subject you to a mild electric shock. Now, as someone who's going to be told you're going to be subjected to a mild electric shock, right? It's about to make you nervous and somehow, right? The first group, they entered in the room alone, and they told them, we're going to subject you to a mild electric shock. Of course, as you could probably imagine, that they felt high levels of stress. The second group, they entered the room, but with a stranger, and that stranger held their hand. Their stress level became less than the expected one. The third group entered a room with their partner, and that partner held their hand while they received the news. They're gonna get a mild electric shock. And what the researcher found is that their stress levels reduced drastically.
Depends on the partner.
Of course. Actually, you said it before me. Your black partner is your marriage. Just a little disclaimer. Numerous studies have found that our partner has the ability not to to only regulate our hormones levels that regulates our mood or metabolism or our growth or our appetite or our sleep levels, but also things like our heart rate and our breathing gets regulated by our partner. These little stuff is what contributes to the satisfaction of the relationship. So attachment tells you is that we're naturally biologically wired to get attached to our partner and seek proximity, whether physical or emotional, and failure to do so, failure to have that connection, will result in our multiple attempts to seek it, even if it is through unhealthy means. It's basically to say that we as human beings are as needy as our unmet needs. And this is what we refer to as the dependency paradox. So I'll give you an example of a dependency paradox that might feel very familiar to you. You find yourself, you open WhatsApp and you find that you're added into a birthday party, like a group for a birthday party of someone you know from uni, okay? And that group has 30 people. What's the first thing you're gonna do? You're gonna go into the list and look through who's going. Or you might actually go directly to the person you're looking for and say, hey, are you going to that party? That person, yeah. That person in your life, if they are a secure base, once you know they're going to that party, there is that calmness that comes to you. You're more likely to engage and socialize with strangers. You're more likely to be in a better mood. And that's why it's called the dependency paradox. The dependency paradox is, afterwards, the more effectively people depend on one another, the more independent and daring they become. And so that way. So what happens when there are people that go through life thinking their needs are gonna go unmet? Like in the case of Emily. I said Emily and James because I was like, no way someone in the room is gonna be called Emily or James. But it's a real life story. Emily and James met at a social event. James was charming, good looking, very social. And the fact that Emily found that the fact that she caught his eyes very flattering. They started dating, and soon James started giving mixed signals. He would call, but go days on end, disappearing, under the excuse of a crazy work schedule. He would show that he's interested in her. There's someone laughing there. He would show that he's interested in her, but then lets her know that he's still playing the field. He would talk about a future, but not one with her in it. Emily has that unsettling feeling in the pit of her stomach that she just cannot put her hands on why she's feeling that way. She started becoming very hypersensitive to any cue that James is gonna give. But then, after a while, James would show up and he'd do that romantic gesture and give a very sincere apology, and Emily would feel elated again. She would be very happy. And she would go into that ebb and flow of the relationship until she became very drained at the end. When her therapist asked her, why did you stay? Emily replied saying, I thought this is what you do for love. Emily is a classic example of what we refer to as the anxious attachment style. Go through the slide. Yeah, here we go. The anxious attachment style has that incredible ability to spot the smallest cues or changes in the relationship that shows that the relationship is threatened. You know that one friend that notices the little details في القعدة, right? The micro expressions of someone not having a good time, right? Someone acting hostile towards another person. They have that uncanny ability to spot when there are changes in social cues. Like Mehi mentioned here, they have high sensitivity towards social cues. And this is what basically goes through the mind of the anxious attachment style, is that when their attachment system gets activated, and then they're faced with this threat. But threat here is not something major. Threat for an anxious could be something like, I posted a story and he didn't see it yet. I called him and he ignored the call. I posted a post and he did not like it. These are all threats. These all could pose threats for the anxious attachment style. And once they feel threatened, they start using what we call as the activating strategies that goes from the system being activated to an overdrive, right? And the sole purpose of the anxious attachment style is to get close to their partner. So let's see what kind of activating strategies do the anxious use in relationships. So activating strategies are any feelings and thoughts that urge you to get closer to your partner. So in the case of an ignored phone call, you might in case of an ignored phone call, you might be so distracted at work, you might think to yourself that he's probably having a good time without me, our relationship is fine, the last time we called I wasn't that pleasant, maybe he doesn't want to talk to me, and all of these gets you distracted at work and unable to concentrate. But also, in the case of maltreatment or neglect, or in the case of Emily and Jane's disappearance, you might justify getting closer to your partner by saying stuff like, well, if I leave, I might end up alone anyways. I'm not that compatible with a lot of people. I believe couples have problems in a relationship. We're not that special. And these are all activating strategies that makes the attachment system of the anxious go into overdrive, right? They might start resorting to some behaviors, such as doing stuff in excess. So you ignored my call, I'm gonna call you 10 times. You went into the room, I'm gonna knock at the door 100 times, right? You ignored my text, I'm gonna vent out. I'm doing stuff in excess, right? I might resort to manipulations, right? Manipulations such as acting jealous in the sense of making the person jealous in the sense of I've met an ex today or someone hit on me. You might act busy when you're not. You might act unapproachable when you're not. They might start withdrawing or threatening to leave, saying that I was better off without you anyways, but in the hopes that your partner will seek you out. Not like the avoidant will find that the avoidant has maybe common patterns of behavior, but with totally different intentions in mind. The anxious do all of these behavior in order to reestablish connection with the partner, whether they actively seek them out through excess, through doing stuff in excess, or urging their partner to seek them out through stuff like threatening to leave. So before we move on to the avoidant, one thing I would like to dedicate to the anxious attachment style, and to let them know is that do not equate an activated attachment system with love. One of the biggest mistakes that anxious attachment style does for themselves is that they start equating the highs and lows, the addiction, the nervousness that you feel in the relationship as love. So when the secure comes into your life and your attachment system is calm, you might equate it as we don't have a spark, or I'm not attracted, or it's boring. Exactly. So one thing that's very important for the anxious to understand is that when a secure comes into your life, you might feel bored at first, but give it time, because you're not used to having a calm attachment system with a partner. And you might start appreciating the peace that comes with having a secure partner. So to recap at first, once we started, we said that getting attached means we are all, regardless of our styles, biologically wired to seek the support of the person we know, whether physically or emotionally, and failure to do so will result in our continuous attempts to reach out to that person, regardless of if it's healthy or unhealthy needs. But what about those people that go through life with that great confidence that they don't need anyone? Everyone knows that person in their life, right? That person that doesn't open up, that person that represses their emotions, that person that just doesn't seem like they need anyone. Are they wired differently? 6 independent studies were performed in a very creative way in order to extract information from the avoidant attachment style. They did it so creatively, they did it unconsciously. Because if you know an avoidant in your life, you know that they're probably not the most open book.
They won't even go to the stack.
They won't go to the stack in the first place. There's someone laughing in the back. So 6 independent studies were performed, and an avoidant attachment style was subjected to flashing words in front of them, and they were asked to recall these words. That study is based on the premise that we tend to recall stuff faster if we think about them in our life, right? You tend to remember the stuff that you think about. So if you're someone with attachment needs, things like fight, loss, separation, all causes a bit of anxiety inside of you. They're kind of attachment issues they have. So they projected these words to the avoidant, thinking that if they recall it fast, then these words are accessible to them. What they found in the first part of the study is that the avoidant recalled it slower than everybody else, which means maybe they're wired differently. But then, at the second part of the study, they distracted the avoidant and they flashed the words. And the avoidant recalled the words with the same speed, just like everybody else. So when the avoidant gets distracted, they do not use their deactivating strategies, and they don't repress their attachment system, and they let their guards down. And this is when their true feelings emerges. And this is what goes through the head of the avoidant attachment style. So maybe they start liking someone or feeling close, and this is where the attachment system gets activated just like everybody else. But then when the avoidant starts noticing it and feel threatened, you're getting into my space, we're getting too close, we're getting too intimate, they're gonna use deactivating strategies in order to repress that attachment system with the sole purpose of re-establishing their autonomy and keeping their partner at an arm's length. So what kind of deactivating strategies do the avoidants use? Next slide. First thing, pulling away when things are good. You know that person in your life when you had that intimate moment, that might be a friend, it might be a partner, when you had that good moment or deep conversation, and they ghost you for days afterwards, right? And you think to yourself, did something go wrong? Did I do something wrong? I thought we were close. But the thing is, people don't realize is that if that person is an avoidant, it's because you were so close. You're not being delusional. So if they start pulling away when things are good, focusing on the small imperfections of their partner, they start noticing the way they chew, the way they look, the way they walk, their families, their values. They start noticing the imperfections of the person in front of them and not giving their relationship a chance before it even starts. I like that strategy very much because it's very misleading. The power of the one or the phantom X. You know that person in your life, when they start fantasizing or dreaming about the idealized version of the person they're going to meet, and then they get into a relationship and they feel happy at first, but then they start pulling away and thinking that if I feel that way, then that person is not the one. That person is not right for me. I have that ideal version inside my head that I fantasize about, and that person is not it. Or the phantom X, I had that girlfriend 4 years ago that I love very much and I cannot get over, my first love. And when they speak, you think that they're craving intimacy and closeness when they're actually using these words to drive you away. Because if you're the partner and they're fantasizing about their ex-girlfriend from 4 years ago or the ideal one and it's not you, then you feel distance. And when you feel that distance, it's because the avoidant is driving you away. Of course, the classic avoiding closeness, whether physically or mentally, suggesting to the partner that they have separate beds, walking, the person who walks a few strides ahead of you, or mentally checking out in a conversation. Keeping secrets, you always think that there's something they're hiding. There's fogginess in their relationship. There's a lot of hiding. You feel like you know them, but you don't really know them. And the last thing, the very classical one, commitment issues. And commitment issues could be starting a relationship in the first place. I'm not ready. I'm not built for a relationship. I have to achieve X in order to get in a relationship. I have to be X in order to be in a relationship. If I'm in a relationship, I'm going to stay years in that relationship without taking active steps for further commitment. These are very classical avoidant strategies they use. So one last thing I want to tell the avoidant is that be aware of your activating strategies. I did not mention most. You could be using a very unique strategy that I did not mention. However, be mindful while you're doing what you're doing. Am I doing it to connect with the person in front of me, or am I doing it to drive them away? because you start noticing your actions, your words, how you behave or act. Am I doing that to make the person in front of me feel connected and know me more? Or am I building a distance between us? So the avoidant tends to do the deactivating strategies more unconsciously than consciously. So they have to be aware of that. And a very helpful tip for the avoidant is that when it comes to your partner, start adopting distraction strategies. Remember the study we talked about when the avoidant was distracted and they let their guard down? Maybe start adopting the distraction strategies when it comes to your partner, like doing activities together. If you're driving or hiking or doing some kind of activity and you're having a conversation with your partner, you're more likely to let your guards down and have a deeper conversation. So maybe the avoidant will start actively doing activities with their partner that will make them feel distracted. Lastly, the secure attachment style. It might seem very boring and redundant to talk about the secure attachment style. I mean, at the end of the day, they're honest, they're straightforward, they're consistent. What there is to say? But I mean, there is a lot to learn from the secure attachment style. You see, the secure attachment style is so different than the avoidant and anxious. They're very responsive to their partner's emotional and physical cues. They don't feel everyone, regardless of their style, their attachment system gets activated. But their attachment system does not get so riled up like the anxious attachment style or shut down like the avoidant attachment style. If their partner is being disrespectful to them, they attribute it to their partner's inability to be responsive in their relationship rather than questioning their own self-worth, like the anxious is more likely to do. But at the end of the day, they view their partner's well-being, whether physical or emotional, as their responsibility. I want to end our discussion by a very interesting study regarding the secure attachment style, is that they were investigating college students in relationships. And as you could all tell, if two secure are in a relationship, the relationship will report higher satisfaction, better functioning, yada, 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 yada. But one interesting thing they found is that when the couples are mixed, they have a secure and an insecure attachment, that is almost enough for the relationship to report higher satisfaction and better functioning. The secure sort of having a relationship where one partner is secure is sometimes enough for the other person to adopt more secure ways. Because your attachment system, once it gets activated, sometimes having someone who's responsive is enough for you to not have it go into overdrive or shut down. And especially if it's an anxious or insecure partner. Anxious are more likely to respond to the secure. So yeah, that's the be your secure, find your secure. That's it, thank you.
So much, Zeina. That's very interesting. I'm sure many people related to حاجات كتير. حاسة إن محتاجين لحظة الناس أنا عندك بس حاجة عايزة أقولها. أول حاجة whenever you say I'm sure you all know this person, I always have a name in mind. We all know this, but I'm sure every one of you know.
Or you are that person.
Oh, I am you are this person فعلا. بس أكتر حاجة كانت لفتت نظري قوي، مش شرط يكون عندك إجابة، بس دي فكرت في بالي إنه what about pulling people to their attachment. مثلا this anxious person who was doing everything they can to get this relationship وبعدين relationship باظت for any way or another. خلاص بقى لوحده. For any other relationship هل ممكن يبقى هو بقى الابويدنت اللي هو خلاص انا حصل لي كفايه قوي من اللي فات، انا بقى مش هرد، لو قرب مني هبعد. ولو فجاه كده وانت بتتكلمي كنت حاسه هل ممكن ده يشد ده، وهل ممكن مثلا secure لو هو فعلا مع الانكشس ممكن هو يشد. الريزلتس بتقول زي ما بتقولي ان هو ممكن one secure is enough. بس انا حسيت ان صعبان عليا السكيور اللي في الريليشن دي. هل ممكن هو in any way يتشد وياخد بقى من طباع الانكس زي ما الانكس بياخد من طباع السكيور؟ كلها thoughts جت في بالي، مش عارفه لو لقيتي.
There are multiple themes you said that I could answer like in different ways. But one thing I want to start with is that attachment tends to be consistent but malleable. So in your life, things like life experience, and no single factor makes up your whole attachment system. Not only your childhood, your life experiences, or whatever happens to you. All of these factors are contributing to your attachment stack. So, but your attachment style tend to be consistent but valuable in the sense of life experiences and even stuff like trauma and separation and divorce and loss. All of these might affect how your attachment style changes over the years. And yes, we said that the secure is more likely to pull someone, but if the secure, because the secure has a tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt. So in a relationship, they might stay longer in relationships that are not benefiting them, in the sense that they were giving the partner the benefit of the doubt, and they might start adopting insecure strategies. So in the sense that, to summarize what I said, secure are more likely to put people up, but if the secure is not aware, you might get pulled down.
حاجة تانية برضه أعتقد وكلامي جات في بالي إنه ممكن برضه depends on the subtype. إنه ممكن لو حد في الanxious بس في قريب شوية للsecure they might يروحوا كده، أو لو الحد يعني فاهمة قصدي إن كل حاجة تحتيها subtypes فmaybe.
خلي بالك anxious being in a relationship with a secure might actually benefit them in the sense that anxious are more likely to follow the pace of their partner. But they're more likely الآخر بياخدوا ساعات مية their partner. They let the partner set the pace of the relationship. If you're in a relationship with a secure, also, we all have our attachment system gets activated. What gets the attachment system from activated to an overdrive for the anxious is threat and activating strategies. Let's say مثلا لو in a relationship, one is anxious and one is secure, تمام? And the anxious called the secure, and the secure ignored the call, تمام? The anxious might have their attachment system activated and they might be going into overdrive. That's the secure, being the secure, might actually cancel the call and after a couple of minutes text the anxious and say, hey, I saw your call, I'm sorry, in the middle of the meeting, I'll call you back. This is enough for the anxious to not go into that vicious loop of an attachment overdrive. So it prevents overdrive before it happens. So having a responsive partner until the anxious learns to have a calm.
First, I love it.
Okay. Thank you. My sister again.
أنا عندي سؤال هو avoidant or anxious or يعني these terms why do we speak about them as if they're people, not the mechanism itself?
It's someone who identifies with the anxious attachment style, and they are systems. That's why we're looking at once that system activated, that is the pattern that follows, usually. But because it's a system, you could recalibrate it. That's why it's malleable. So you could train yourself as you got trained your whole life for your system to be in an overdrive, such as in the case of the anxious that you start mistaking it for love. After a while, being calm, you might start recalibrating your system in a way and start getting used to the call.
having a corrective emotional experience.
Exactly.
ممكن برضه هو في الavoidant يعني if لو في كل البلوكج دي ان انا منع احس ان انا needy منع اصلا the thought even from myself. If you ask me, I'll deny it. Because if you scratch that, there is an anxiousness beneath it. And if you push كده شوية, there is an anxious drive goal. بس أنا مش عايزة حتى أفيل this anxious part.
That's a very and that's the thing. Remember the study we mentioned in home when the avoidant got distracted. Their natural deactivating strategies that they used, once they stopped using them, their attachment system surfaced and they let their guard down and their true feelings emerged at the end of the day. So yes, the avoidant feels the attachment just like everybody else, and even they found that in cases of trauma or loss or separation, an avoidant might start acting like an anxious. In some studies, actually, they found in case of major life events, the avoidant might actually start acting the way an anxious would. So so yeah.
ممكن ازود حاجه على related to this point. احنا last week we were actually talking about infant sleep and your comment reminded me of that قوي because there was the point about how the idea of sleep training ان هم الاطفال تبطل تعيط. They don't stop crying because they no longer need the parent. They stop crying because they've learned انه it's no longer adaptive for me to continue crying. So it's not that يعني أنا بالنسبة لي this really reminded me of that. And someone who's avoidant or who uses these strategies, it's not necessarily إن هو مش حاسس إن هو عايز يبقى قريب من الناس التانية. It's not that they don't feel that, but it's that أنا بالنسبة لي even if I need that for example يبقى الناس التانية مش هترد عليا أو إنه I won't be able to find that. I love the point that you made إن هو there is like an anxiety beneath that because that makes a lot of sense. And at the end of the day حتى at the beginning you were saying we're all wired and we all have an attachment system. At the end of the day كلنا محتاجين نبقى قريبين من الناس اللي حوالينا. It's about how we really learn to ask for that or we learn to be in those types of relationships. حاسة that's a really nice point.
I raised it كمان عشان زي ما قلت يعني if you scratch it avoidant you will find يعني مش هتبقى اللي هو خلاص انا مع النيدز بتاعته انا هجيب الانكزايتي.
عارفة يا مايا يعني some people of avoidance too many avoidance that I know in my life يعني في لحظات الكلوزنس بسمع منهم كلمة دايما شكلها بيتكرر هيعملوا لي ايه لما اشتكي؟ هيعملوا لي ايه لو عيطت؟ هيحصل ايه لو زعلت؟ فاهمة الفكرة؟ فهو هم حبايبي دي بوست هوب
بيسمعوا
بيتعلموا ده هم ما اتعلموش ده الحدث ده هم عاشوا الاحداث قبل كده هم learned it already. فانا على الافويدنت برضه انا كان عندي سؤال لان انا مش متخيله قوي شكل العلاقه ما بين السكيور والافويدنت وحاسه ان المنظر ده من الدايناميك دايما هيطلع السكيور انكشس ان هم relatively هيبقوا anxious towards الافويدنت relatively لان احنا لو تخيلناها على سبيكترم فدايما ده هيبقى distant ودايما ده هيبقى seeking proximity حتى لو هو stable ومش feeling irritated بس دايما شكل العلاقه هيبقى غريب. مش قادره اتخيل قوي الافويدنت يعني متخيله قوي الانكشس افويدنت تراب بس انا مش متخيله السكيور مع الافويدنت قوي بصراحه.
One thing about the avoidant and I think Zeina mentioned انه the anxious tends to blame themselves more on the relationship. They feel more inferior. They tend to overestimate their partner's talents and underestimate their own. and هيجي الحتة دي دلوقتي. فمثلا if the partner doesn't call back, they're more likely to think, what did I do last time? For him to act that way. The avoidant is opposite. Is more likely to attribute blame to the relationship on the partner rather than find it that small imperfections in the relationship. Like Mahi, you mentioned that point, and then I'm not lonely, I'm bored from you. And this is a very avoidant pattern in a relationship. فمشكلة الباترن إنه when it comes to issues of the relationship, they're more likely to attribute it to the partner rather than look inside and be aware of the deactivating strategies. That's why I used it as a tip for the avoidant. In order for the avoidant to move into a secure base in general and be with the secure, عشان كده the anxious are easier. That does not mean that the avoidant isn't, but the anxious is more easier to become more secure with the secure in the relationship. The avoidant here, the challenge is different. Is that the avoidant, one of the things they have to do is look internally and spot their deactivating strategies in order to allow their attachment system and truly connect with their partner, regardless of whether that partner is a secure and anxious, a secure always.
صح يلوموا السكيور الغلبان ان هو اللي ما عملش حاجه.
احنا اعتمدنا على الجمله الصوتيه دي بتاعت ان هو blame others rather than themselves يعني ده لوحده شايفه ان هو يعني هيهد كتير من تصوراتي عن people I could identify as avoidant لان لا انا في ناس بتبقى distant جدا في relationships especially when they come close contact بس دايما ال underlying words بتاعتهم I'm not good enough it will end up anyway فخليني بره احسن. فده يعني دول مش genuinely avoidant
مش قوي مش اصلي يعني it's a self protective mechanism at the end of the day. فهو مهم ان احنا نفهمها انا ليه بعمل كده why was this adapted قبل كده وليه دلوقتي انا شايفه ان دي حاجه هتساعدني هل هي اصلا بتساعدني ولا لا. وبعدين عايزه اقول حاجه عشان احنا دايما لما بنتكلم على السكيور بنتكلم على السكيور as someone who's perfect. That's not the case. كنا لسه بنتكلم انا وماي في الموضوع ده على في كتاب اسمه ايه ماي؟ اسمه كتاب عربي جديد related to attachment. It presents good material بس حاجه من الحاجات اللي كنا لسه بنتناقش فيها انه it is presenting the secure person as someone who's perfect. محدش perfect كلنا عندنا insecurities
كلنا عندنا our buttons. ممكن ابقى السنسيتيفيتي بتاعتي اعلى او اوطى وان سبيكتروم وكده، بس مش معنى كده انه السكيور بيرسون هو الشخص البرنس شارمينج اللي جاي على الحصان الابيض خالص. ما هو برضه عنده his own insecurities وهيبقى عنده attachment system that's triggered sometimes. فدي مهمه ان احنا ما نشوفهاش as the perfect and التانيين بقى اللي جايين هم اللي عندهم their own imperfections. كل واحد هيجي بالقصص بتاعته and it's important ان كل حد يبقى aware فين الباتنز and what can I do. بس I think going back to your question لما كان على حد secure وحد avoidant، فالavoidant needs his space. حد secure ممكن يبقى more likely انه يشوفها كده، هو محتاج his space مش هو زهقان مني. فاعرف ان انا مثلا اقول my partner needs to be with his friends، هو بيحب يعمل activities معينه او يسافر او يعمل حاجه with his friends and I don't take it personally. مش هاخدها زي ما ممكن حد with anxious tendencies ياخدها something is wrong with me. فاهم قصدي؟ بس again not to say it انه السكيور هو البيرفكت. I don't think حد مننا هيبقى ساعتها هيidentiفy حتى as secure لو قلنا ان السكيور is perfect.
I think عشان ده سؤالها كتير قوي.
انا عندي سؤال اكيد انا فاهمه صح. احنا دلوقتي بنتكلم عن attachment لو في بيس ان انا الانسان ده my friend my boyfriend whatever، اللي هو في بيس of like love towards الحد ده، صح؟ ده صح ولا غلط؟
You feel some kind of connection with that person.
Yeah, I do get that. بس برضه فكرت في حاجة انت بتتكلمي اللي هو طب ما sometimes لو مثلا حد avoidant وحد anxious sometimes هما بيexcite بعض قوي وبيكون في thrill خطير، ف that's the only thing keeping them together يعني. I don't think there's anything. بالظبط. فهنا هو مفيش أي حاجة غير إن هما الاتنين عكس بعض موت، فهما كانوا بيطلعوا insecurities اللي بعض موت. فده هو there's nothing but still they're super connected.
العلاقة مستمرة بس هل هي مرضية؟
أنا فاهمة إن قصدي في حاجة زي كده اللي هو then why would anyone decide to leave؟ اللي هو then there's nothing there مفيش threat واضح، لأن كده كل حد بيجت الثريل اللي هو عايزه out of the thing، بس there's nothing يعني straight up بتقولك leave أو leave because like you're not experiencing anything but thrill. فاهمين؟ فمش عارفة. حاسة دي thoughts يعني مش مستنية رد.
And if someone wants to share something related to
أعتقد يعني ردا على سؤالك أو تساؤلك يعني إن المساحة ممكن تبقى أولاً لو one of them started to heal هو مش هيعرف يكمل هنا. الحاجة التانية لو حد منهم started to يبقى exhausted بقى تمام، لأن هو التراب أصله إن هو حد بيفول باك، حد بيقرب منه فده يبعد أكتر فده يرجع وراها تاني وهكذا بنفضل في الداينامكس دي. فلما حد يتعب بقى تماماً ويبقى خلاص emotionally exhausted خلاص يعني it's an end. وفي ناس ممكن تكمل تفضل في الايموشنال فاتيك ده مكملين حياتهم كلها كده، عشان كده في علاقات كتير مكمله وهي مش ستيبل، هي مش هيلثي ريليشن شيب ليهم هما الاثنين مش لاقي حاجه ثانيه يعني.
بالظبط. اصلا بيخليني افكر في حته قد ايه حاجه يعني بتقعد شبه موت كونسبت ان attachment ممكن تبقى موجوده لوحدها، او ان انا ابقى attached شخص من غير ما اكون بجد بحبه او من غير ما يبقى في ايموشن.
صح جدا.
فاي ثينك دي حاجه
صح جدا.
Yes.
I think this refers back برضه لحته انه you think it's passion, you think it's love, but at the end of the day it's just your attachment style being triggered and fed at the same time. وانت بالنسبه لك ده عادي انه يبعد فانا اللي اضطر اقلل نفسي ولا
feed on each other's insecurities. لأن الavoidant خلي بالك مثلا لو أنا ببعد وحد بيقرب مني أنا كavoidant it feeds into the feeling that I'm self-sufficient and I'm independent unlike you. تمام؟ it makes you feel more superior into the relationship while it confirms زي ما منى قالت to the anxious إنه أنا اللي محتاجة reach out، أنا اللي محتاجة أعمل علشان the person satisfies my needs, which is I think that the anxious has. It turns into a vicious cycle in a way, but that's why both has to understand that these are activated attachment systems. This is not love, this is not passion, this is not.
على فكرة هو ده بالظبط زي ما كنت بتقولي ليه ممكن بعد كده you get into a relationship that's calm and then it's like أيوة الحوار فين ده؟ أيوة كده بعد امتى بقى هيبقى في action في الموضوع ف it doesn't feel normal anymore. وده بيرجع ل some childhood برضه في ناس متعودة في بيتها to a certain level of intensity. العلاقات intense. ففكرة ان العلاقة اسقال وسموذ وبنسمع بعض وكده ده غريب مش عادي.
عايزة برضو أعرف حاجة تانية not only childhood بس دي حاجة دايما بحب أتكلم عنها في أي context هي الأفلام أو المسلسلات. مش أي فيلم هيكون insecure بعدين يتناقشوا حلو.
عارفة بيجيبهم سكندري رول الجيران اللي هم قاعدين في قصه هاديه كده مش عليهم
هما
حوار يعني
مش حاجه احنا مش عايزينها اصلا.
فتحسي انه ايه الملل ده، انا ليه ما عنديش
مفيش قصه. عايزه ارجع على فكره اللي انتوا بتقولوه ده والبرزنتيشن الاولانيه خالص ان ساعات في جوه الانكشس والافويدنت بيبقى عندك كمان personality disorders that keeps the dynamic going يعني like hell يعني جدا. لو انت عندك vulnerable narcissism قصاده حد تاني في الريليشن يعني الفولنربل نارسيسيزم انا شفت كان تقريبا tend to be avoidant صح؟ مش فاكره vulnerable كان anxious صح فتخيلي لو هو بالشكل ده vulnerable narcissism ومعاه حد sounds to be avoidant او حتى secure وهو شكله victim في نفسه بس هو anxious الدايناميك دي بتفضل مكمله.
عندي حاجه عايزه اقولها على اللي هو السكيور ممكن يبول insecure into being secure. فكان في term قريته اسمه corrective relationship which means ايوه انه يعني ممكن حد يبقى عايش في كبر وهو ما عندوش اي علاقه فيها امان مثلا بس تيجي relationship واحده تساعده ان هو يدخل into being secure. بس في حاجه بقى عايزه برضه another study that Dr. Noor mentioned اللي هو احيانا بيكون في pressure قوي على secure person اللي هو ان هو perfect. فقريت ان كلنا عندنا our main attachment style بس beneath it بقى في traits من ال anxious ومن ال avoidant ومن ال fearful بس they are deactivated. فبقى how they are scratched is based on how the other partner يعني gets them out of me. فحاسه ان مثلا if I'm secure sometimes ممكن my partner gets out of me حته من anxiousness I wasn't aware ان هي موجوده فده بيحط عليا pressure اللي هو انا بعمل كده ليه عشان I'm showing traits من حد ممكن يبقى anxious او حد يبقى avoidant.
Very good point actually. It makes you look at it from a more of a spectrum rather than the Dr. Noor edit, the perfect, imperfect, the black and white thinking. You become active participants, but you also you're more likely to get yourself يعني more likely to notice the people around you, but also notice yourself and your patterns in a way that's a very, very good point.
لما انا برجع من ماندي سي بقعد بقى ابص
تلاقي بكره ماندي